Welcome back to this already the final segment of The Price of Business for you today. Well, I tell you, this week's been flying by. It feels good to be back to a normal work schedule. I hate kiss and tell books, particularly by of the political variety. But Robert Gates, the former Secretary of Defense for both Bush and Obama, has written just that. The book is called, I think it's called Duty, and I want to go ahead and cover some of this coverage, if you will, that's been done by Fox News. Here's a story that was done in Fox News just this week.
New reaction, and lots of it today, after former Defense Secretary Robert Gates has suggested that politics has always been the driving factor behind many of President Obama's decisions, particularly the military ones. He wrote a new memoir. It's going to be released next week. And in it, Bob Gates writes, quote, President Obama simply wanted to end the bad war in Iraq and limit the U.S. role in the good war in Afghanistan. His fundamental problem in Afghanistan was that his political and philosophical preferences for winding down the U.S. role conflicted with his own pro-war public rhetoric, especially during the 2008 campaign. Joined now by Alan Colmes, host of The Alan Colmes Show and a Fox News contributor. Tucker Carlson is the editor at The Daily Caller and co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend. Gentlemen, welcome to both of you. I just want to bring up one more quote, because it's connected to what I just referenced, and I want to get this in the mix as well. He says, as I sat there, and this is a Situation Room meeting in March of 2011, I thought, the president doesn't trust his commander, General David Petraeus, can't stand Afghan President Hamid Karzai, and doesn't believe in his own strategy and doesn't consider the war to be his. For him, it's all about getting out. Alan, why don't you take that on first?
Why didn't he quit? I mean, if he felt so badly about his commander-in-chief, he should have quit sooner. Also, there's another part of the book where he says, I believe Obama was right in each of these decisions. The one about Afghanistan, he calls Obama a man of personal integrity. So which Robert Gates? Well, the real Robert Gates, please stand up. He says very contradictory things in different parts of the book. And those who like President Obama will take some of this, and those who don't like President Obama will take other of his statements. But he's not consistent in the things he says in this book.
All right, I want to get to him writing the book and why in a moment, but I just want to stick to this issue with you, Tucker, in this first question. With regard to where we were in 2008 when the president ran, you have to remember how much of the president's campaign was based on what a horrible war the Iraq War was, how dumb it was for President Bush to have done it in the first place, and that he was smarter than that he knew that the real war, the real enemy, was lurking in the mountains in Afghanistan, and that he was going to be a better president and take the fight where it needed to be. Then it turned out the realities of what that was like, fighting that war, turned out to be something that he apparently, according to Bob Gates, did not want to stomach.
Well, he had no foreign policy experience of any kind. I mean, he had been, of course, a state senator just a few years before. He set up this duality. There's the bad war in Iraq and the good war in Afghanistan. It was a way of establishing that he wasn't a reflexively anti-war liberal. And it turns out he never meant any of it. Now, you could argue that his policy in Afghanistan has been good or bad or whatever, but it is totally inconsistent with his campaign promises. And Gates reveals that it was deeply cynical from the very beginning. I mean, the conversation that he witnessed between the president and the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, about how she had tailored her answer about the Iraq surge based on whether or not it would help her get elected, and they both sort of nod like, of course, this is how policy is formulated based on the polls. I mean, it's a really revealing look at how they make decisions.
Yeah, but on the other hand, he calls Hillary Clinton...
I want you to address that, because that's a devastating quote, okay? If as commander-in-chief and leader of the nation, if you are putting anything political before the lives of these young men and women that you are sending out there into the battle in Afghanistan, that's a very huge criticism.
People who believe that about Obama or Hillary Clinton will take it as gospel, and other people will look at other parts of the book. For example, he also says Hillary Clinton is pragmatic, tough-minded, indefatigable, funny, a valuable colleague, and a superb representative of the United States all over the world. So again, which version of what Robert Gates says do you want to believe in this book? Because he contradicts himself all over the place.
All right, let's talk about that, because Britt Hume last night was on with Megyn and brought up that question. Tucker, why didn't Bob Gates, why did he come forward with all this now? And if he felt so strongly about these really serious indiscretions that you're referencing here, was it not his duty to speak about them then?
Well, I know Gates, and I can say I think he's one of the most impressive people I've ever met, but I think that's a fair criticism. I mean, sure, you shouldn't reserve your thoughts like this for your book. It seems to me that if you really feel this way, you have an obligation to do something about it, and maybe you did. I haven't read the book, only the excerpts. I would say the most striking part of it to me was his description of Obama's aides, the people who are really carrying out the policy. Tom Donilon, National Security Advisor, who he describes as incompetent. He says Samantha Power, who really is not an impressive person, who really is kind of an awestruck freshman, I would say, is determining whether we commit troops to this or that country. I mean, there's no defending that. I would love to hear Alan describe why Samantha Power ought to have any kind of ability to commit troops or make deep decisions.
She doesn't.
Like that.
But the point is, I don't know whether it's true. Which part of this book do you want? Which part of this book do you want to believe? If you are an anti-Obama person, an anti-Samantha Power, you're going to believe everything Gates says about that. If you have a different point of view, you're going to pick and choose because he contradicts himself completely in this book.
Every book, when you have experiences with people, human beings are complex, right? You can respect somebody on many levels and disagree with decisions that they made at the most serious level as well. So I think that the notion that he has to be consistent on all of these people.
Well, either he agrees with the strategy or he doesn't.
It's a little bit sophomoric.
He can't say he agrees with the strategy in one part of the book and then blast him for the strategy in another part of the book, which is it?
No, but Alan, you're answering your own question. The reason we need to take this book seriously is because Gates is not a reflexive Obama hater. He's not some kind of fervid right-wing guy. He worked for the president, and he has a kind of nuanced view of the president. That's why his criticisms can't be...
It's not nuanced to directly contradict yourself. That's not nuanced.
I want to get your thoughts on one more thing before we run out of time. And I wonder if we're going to hear more about this as we read, the rest of the book and we hear some of his interviews. Because it's possible that his motivation for doing this now is the troops. And is his allegiance to what he sees as a very broken system in terms of who's guiding the policy out there, and that is his primary concern, and that may be why he has decided that he had no choice but to come forward and reveal some of the inner workings here because he thinks people need to know them. Alan?
I feel that Tucker made a very good point earlier when he said, why didn't he do this early? Why didn't he quit? Or you wait till the president's out of office, or unless you just want to cash in on a book. If he truly felt, as you described, that he should not have kept his job. He said he hated his job, by the way, in the book. He despised what he did for a living. Why did he stay as long as he did?
Tucker?
Well, presumably his understanding of service had something to do with it. I think he describes that in the book. He felt it was his duty. And by the way, I think it's a little much to dismiss Gates as like a bad defense secretary because he's critical of the savior here. I mean, he was, up until last week, lauded by Republicans and Democrats alike as a totally sober, serious, smart person who we were glad to have working in the federal government.
I just wish with the real Gates, please stand up. I don't know which one is talking here.
All right, guys, thank you very much. We'll dig more into this, obviously, as the book comes out. Thank you very much for being here today.
All right. What do you think about that, Sigmund Kramer? We were talking a little bit about it before.
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, I think that Gates, by writing memoirs that were so incredibly conflicted and contradictory, is not helping the situation on either side. Even Tucker Carlson and
Combs
couldn't necessarily defend they were deflecting, but the fact is, I think that Robert Gates was probably disenchanted, obviously, for a long time. Why didn't he get out sooner? I mean, I hate to say it, but Alan Combs has some good points there.
Yeah, and I'm one of those type, if you don't like to work for someone, you need to be a big boy and leave, especially if you got the financial largesse to do it, which I'm sure Robert Gates had. Not that he's, super rich, but with a PhD, he had the capability of moving on. And I hate kiss and tell. I simply hate kiss and tell type
Sure,
books.
for a reason. It's very tabloid-esque.
It very much so. And unfortunately, I think he's trying to sell some books. All right, that's my thoughts. Love to get yours. By the way, you can always contact us at info@usdailyreview.com. That's our sister news website. And we'll have more about this over there as well. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you tomorrow right here on The Price of Business.